Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees make another trade, and this time they acquire Ahmed Rosario from the Washington Nationals for Clayton, Beeter, and Browm Martinez. Clayton Beeter, who was acquired from the Dodgers in the Joey Gallo deal a few years ago. There was some promise for him. He's someone that's kind of landed somewhere in the number 15, number 20 in terms of Yankee prospects, and there's an arm there. Never really had much success in his short couple stints the last couple of years with the Yanks at the major league level, but was a starter. And then, last year and certainly this year is really more in a relief role, even in the minor leagues. If he can cut the walks down, that seems to be the biggest issue. Control is the issue for him. He's got really good strikeout numbers. So, I think that there's some promise for the Nationals for Beeter. And then as far as Browm Martinez goes, he is an outfielder in rookie ball. He was an international free agent out of the Dominican Republic. Actually has some pretty impressive numbers in rookie ball, but not much else to speak of in terms of any other information. He's not part of the top 30 Yankees prospect list. And before we get into Rosario, I want to say I may have made a mistake on the McMahon episode, possibly, where Griffin Herring, the lefty, he's actually number 5 on the Rockies prospect list now. So either I missed him on that original top 30 because I brought up Josh Gross, who was lower on the list, and I didn't see Herring. I may have just either missed him or he just got added in because he is now higher on that list. So just wanted to make that correction on that McMahon trade. But speaking of McMahon, as it pertains to Rosario, this seems to be a platoon at third base. Now, Rosario makes a lot of sense. And look, this isn't much of a needle mover. And there is a lot going on in Yankees land right now. As I'm recording this, it's in the middle of the Phillies series, and Aaron Judge is expected to go on the injured list. He will. Not official yet, but with a right flexor strain. So doesn't necessarily affect this move, although I am wondering, because ultimately Rosario takes the Oswald Peraza spot, essentially. But for the here and now, it is very possible that because of Rosario's versatility, that for now, in theory, Rosario and Peraza could both be players on this roster. And then once Judge comes back, if everyone else is healthy, then at that point, Peraza, something gives there. But in essence, that's really what it is. Now, Rosario isn't very good defensively. He provides versatility, but he's more of a bat-first player, specifically really good against left-handed pitching. That's been his calling card for his whole career and still exists today. So for Rosario, who is a free agent at the season, so it's a rental. I mean, again, this is a move that I agree with, but again, it's not a huge move, but one that I think will help the team. And I think he'll be mostly in a third base role, maybe a little bit of second base, right? Like against a lefty, and maybe Jazz can use a day off. Maybe they go with Rosario starting at second. He played shortstop for basically his whole Met tenure and for the Cleveland Guardians. It's really only recently since he left Cleveland that he's not really played as much shortstop, but he can. And so in a situation as far as Volpe goes, Rosario can play short. I mean, it's not ideal. You don't want it to happen, but it gives you that versatility. He can play, the corner outfield positions. I think you'd more likely see him in right field than left based on what I can tell, but every stadium's got different dimensions. So it could depend on that too. But, this is something I think that they were interested in him before. Maybe it was last season. You've heard Yankees and Rosario connections before. This isn't the first time, but what you like is that, this is someone that has an above 800 OPS. I think right around 820 this year against lefties. And that's always been his calling card. And that's what I've been saying. LeMahieu wasn't going to be able to fill that role as sort of this off the bench. That just wasn't, because he didn't provide versatility, wasn't great defensively. But Rosario, he will be up in situations. You will see him as a pinch hitter against lefties. There's many of them. Look, and this is no slight against them, but right, like Rosario for McMahon, Rosario for Ben Rice. I don't know, Rosario, maybe even for Trent Grisham. I'm just saying, that is something that very much will be in play here. Now, as far as Rosario's career goes, came up with the Mets as a pretty highly touted player and never really quite lived up to expectations. Although I will say, against the Yankees, and I'm not sure if the career stats bear this out, but he was really a thorn on the Yankees side. Really was. I felt like, considering that Rosario wasn't a great player. He's a bat to ball guy, by the way. So if you like players that don't strike out a lot, this is your guy. Now, on the flip side, he doesn't walk a lot either. He's the opposite of McMahon. McMahon is a three true outcome player. Rosario, at this point in his career, he's not going to hit many homers. He's not going to walk much, but he will put the ball in play. So you're hoping that you get some good situational baseball when it comes to Ahmed Rosario. Used to have some pretty good steal numbers, only one this year, but just as recently as last year at 13. So, he's got a little bit of speed. But with the Mets, was on their squad for 4 seasons. And then after the 2020 season was traded in the Francisco Lindor deal with Andres Jimenez. And in a way, kind of picked things up. Although really his best year offensively was as a Met in 2019 with 15 homers, 72 RBIs, and a 287 batting average and a 755 OPS. With Cleveland, though, he kind of bounced back from a not so good shortened 2020 season, and was on the Guardians for basically 2.5 seasons. And his one playoff appearance was as a Guardian against the Yankees in 2022. And in fact, he did homer in that series. I remember him again, like the overall stats weren't there, but he was an annoying player to go against. He really was. Um, and was up towards the top of that lineup. Maybe that speaks to something, right? It's not ideal for a playoff team to have him up there. Him in this more of utility platoon role is more what you're looking for. And ever since he was traded from Cleveland, that's kind of what it's been. He was traded by the Guardians to the Dodgers in 2023. And then in 24, bounced around between 3 teams, mostly Tampa at the start, and actually did pretty well with the Rays. Then goes to the Dodgers briefly again, only for him to then be claimed off waivers from the Dodgers by the Cincinnati Reds, and he struggled with the Reds. So it kind of got worse and worse. But again, started out good with the Rays, just like this year, to a lesser extent, has started out well in a lesser role with the Nationals. Just hasn't really got much. Like for them, it's a team that isn't really looking like they're looking more to the future and playing young players. So for Rosario, the fit isn't there. He makes more sense on a Yankee team, honestly. And one that is struggling right now for sure, but one that, is bad as it is right now, still has aspirations to make the playoffs. The division's looking less and less likely by the day, but, Rosario, I think, will fill that role mostly at third base. And again, as far as what you're giving up, it's nothing too crazy. Clayton Beeter was an interesting arm, and you kind of wanted something to come from Joey Gallo. And really all that is now is just a couple of months of Ahmed Rosario is really all you have left from the Joey Gallo deal. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing there. And then Browm Martinez again, it's a total lotto ticket situation as he's in rookie ball right now. But Rosario makes a lot of sense. In some ways for me, obviously McMahon is much more of a significant sort of move considering the contract status, and he is on the stronger side of the platoon. But in some ways, Rosario, it almost makes more sense to me as far as his right-handed and prowess against lefties. They really could use that with the way that this team is built. So I like the versatility. He's not really going to necessarily give you that great defense, but there is something to be said for kind of moving around. In some ways, he is kind of taking that role, although different skill sets, of Oswaldo Cabrera as someone that can play in the infield, outfield as well. But with Rosario, certainly his strength is in his batting average, which isn't necessarily so much with today's game, and really being good against southpaws. So, yep, your third basemen are completely different. In a couple of days, it really had bounced around a lot, where it was Cabrera, Chisholm Jr., Peraza, Bibas, and now it seems pretty set, barring injury, with McMahon and Rosario. And I like the fact that McMahon now probably won't start a lot against lefties. I think that's really good. The fact they were able to, in two players, now make third base more than competent in all likelihood. So, again, Yankees, it's kind of in a state of flux right now. And obviously bad news on Aaron Judge, but could have been worse. He'll be back, but he's going to be out for a little bit. And so now, the Yankees are still trying to make some trades. What you'd expect to see next is pitching. I honestly don't really expect any more moves on the hitter front. I do think this is probably it, unless there's something in the works, like a blockbuster of some sort where hitters are going the other way. I pretty much expect this to be the offensive mix. Now, what you'd expect to see is bullpen and starting pitching help. They need it badly. It hasn't been an offensive issue lately. It's been a pitching issue. And so that needs to be addressed and, in full force as well. So again, Yankees acquire Ahmed Rosario from the Nationals for Clayton, Beeter, and Browm Martinez after already acquiring Ryan McMahon for the Rockies. So now you have your new third base platoon, and we'll see what's next, as I believe that the Yankees will certainly be hunting pitching in all forms as we are about 4 or 5 days away from the trade deadline.